The marvelous thing about the movies is that all over the world, people will come out on a wet night and queue up to see a big film on a big screen. For 100 years, the cinema really has been the greatest show on earth. But the making of the films that create the queues, the films that we remember, will always need a bit of luck, a lot of work, and a very special talent.
Everybody's talking at me.
For a director and his team, every film is an uncertain journey, and each stage in the production presents a different challenge.
We make films that have some individuality about them, which is why they might possibly be successful. But you can't guarantee it. As William Goldman says in his book Adventures in the Screen Trade, nobody knows anything. And it's true. You don't know when you're making a film. You can only hope.
We have to go under!
Ah, I can't breathe like you!
I'll breathe for both of us!
There is a lot of pressure to do blockbusters, and I think the studios, they would like to think there's a formula for them, because when they invest that much money in something, they'd like to be able to say, well, if we simply follow the formula, we're going to have a hit. But I don't think that always holds true.
Big films are costly, lumbering creatures, and handling them properly is one of the toughest jobs in the world.
I always say that we're the last of the travelling circuses. We can hardly go anywhere without a great mass of vans and cranes and camera cars and all the rest of it. It's as if one were trying to write with a very, very fine pencil. One had a huge, great engine to do it with, you know?
To make a movie, you need a lot of money. You need a lot of resources, and you need a lot of manpower. It isn't like making refrigerators. You won't be able to know if your movie works or not until it's completely finished. So that's what makes the industry so frustrating. It's also what I think makes it so exhilarating.
The first challenge is to get the film off the ground. Even a smash hit like Back to the Future had trouble getting started.
Everyone has stories like this, and the Back to the Future story was a very typical one, where my partner and I, Bob Gale, wrote the screenplay for Back to the Future, and it took 5 years to get it made, and we shopped the script literally to every single studio and production entity in town. And in hindsight, the story is kind of cute, because you wonder, well, why didn't anyone make this movie?
I guess you guys aren't ready for that yet. But your kids are gonna love it.
You have to have a good screenplay. I mean, I've seen good screenplays made into bad movies, but I've never seen a good movie made from a bad screenplay.
But good scripts are hard to write and harder to sell.
I rented a house at Malibu for a wonderful November period. It was my first time in Hollywood. We were working on the script, as it were, overlooking the beach. And we really got hooked. We really got into writing this, to working on this script. And I really thought it's really interesting stuff and risky. Various agents who were friends of the producers were walking up and down, and they would watch us on our veranda working and having a conference about the script. Nobody thought it was a very good idea. Agent might say, "How's it going?" You know, no faith in it whatsoever. And various friends of mine said, "What on earth do you want to make this film about these two dreary faggots for?" I said, "Well, first of all, that's inaccurate. And secondly, I think they're very interesting characters."
John Schlesinger's faith in his script was confirmed when Midnight Cowboy went on to win 3 Oscars.
I think writing is the most crucial aspect of filmmaking, and of course, very, very close second is your cast. I've always said many times that good directing is good writing and good casting.
Okay, that's it. Just like that now. Hold it.
Many people say the key to The Godfather's blockbusting success was its superb cast, but nobody could have foreseen what a problem it would be getting the happy group together.
I cast the film out of poverty, which is sometimes very good. I had no money to spend on cast. Because of that, we had to use new people. And that's what makes it exciting, when you have to use new people. Pacino, knowing who the hell was Pacino, Marlon Brando at the time could not get a job. He had made 22 pictures, of which 11 were unreleasable. No actor was paid more than $50,000 in the entire film. That's exciting. That's exciting filmmaking.
Casting Al Pacino was a drama in itself, a chilling scene that could have been lifted straight out of the movie. It starred Kirk Kerkorian, the owner of MGM, whose pride and joy was the MGM Grand Hotel he was building in Las Vegas, Jim Albury, who ran the MGM film studio and its operations, and Sidney Korshak, lawyer, fixer, and longtime friend of Robert Evans.
And I called Sidney Korshak, who is like my godfather, and he's staying at the Carlisle, and he knows a lot of very influential people. I think at that time he was amongst the most influential men in America. He says, Sidney, he says, yeah, I need your help. He says, yeah, as an actor, I'm trying to get for the lead in The Godfather, and he signed to another picture at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer called The Gang Who Couldn't Shoot Straight, and I gotta have him. He said, what do you want from me? I said, I know you're friendly with Kirk Kerkorian, who owns Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and maybe you could call him, because I called Jim Aubrey and he hung the phone up on me, which he did. Stay by the phone. 20 minutes later, Jim Aubrey calls me, not Sidney Korshak. Says, you no good mother, said, okay, you got the midget if you want to. Hangs the phone up in my ear. I didn't know what happened. I called Korshak back at the hotel. I said, Sidney, what happened? He said, what do you mean? I said, what happened? He said, did Aubrey call you? He says, yeah. Is everything okay? I said, yeah. I said, don't ask me any other questions. Sidney, what happened? I called Kirk at Vegas. He's building the MGM Grand. And I say, Kirk, Bobby needs some actor. He says, look, Sidney, Aubrey has total autonomy. I can't get involved. He says, Kirk, do you want to finish the MGM Grand? I understand, Sidney, okay. That's how I got Al Pacino.
Now, Mo Green will sell us his share of the casino and the hotel, so it could be completely owned by the family. Tom?
Hey, Mike, are you sure about that? Mo loves the business. He never said nothing to me about selling.
Now, I'll make him an offer he can't refuse.
So finding the right actors is vital, and David Selznick, the producer of Gone with the Wind, demanded the perfect cast. 30 years before The Godfather, he knew how to make an offer you couldn't refuse.
Everybody in America had a notion of who should play Scarlett and Rhett. They cast the picture, they cast minor parts. They wrote us thousands and thousands of letters. I have never seen so much excitement in a country about casting. I would say 9/10 of the letters demanded Clark Gable to be Rhett Butler. And they were right. It's that he looked the part, he could act the part, and he himself was adamantly against it. But we held a trump card because Clark was madly in love with Carole Lombard, who was an enchantress, and he wanted to marry her. But he's married to Rhea Gable. And we thought that if we could get Mrs. Gable to give up her husband for a certain amount of money, provided she could talk him into playing the part in order to get a divorce, that we would have him. And so we went to L.B. Mayer with the suggestion. And I don't remember what we paid her, but it would be, in today's terms, maybe $500,000. And sure enough, she decided to take the offer, and she talked to him and told him that if he would play the role in Gone with the Wind, she would give him the divorce she had been denying him for years.
With Clark Gable as Rhett and Vivien Leigh as Scarlett, the film went on to become an all-time blockbuster.
4:59, take 2.
Mark.
Once a film is scripted and cast, it's time to start shooting.
Before I went off to location, I went in to Steven Spielberg and I said, do you have any advice for a first-time filmmaker about to go make his first feature? And he just sat there for a minute and thought about it, and he said, to survive it.
Directing is a very, very lonely job. Everybody expects you to be 100% secure. You must never show any weakness of any kind to anybody or any kind of indecisiveness to anybody, because immediately everybody will try and suggest to you what you should do, particularly the actors.
Which is why some directors get tough with them.
Get your fingers in there. Fight hard to do it. And then the fingers get weaker and weaker.
Hitchcock always used to say actors should be treated like cattle.
Slowly. As that knot tightens and tightens and the fingers go away. Same time as you thresh your head backwards and forwards.
He didn't say they were cattle, he said they should be treated like cattle, and he did treat them that way. And a lot of people didn't want to work with Hitchcock because of that.
Just that. Okay. Slowly, slowly. And
he was a bit sadistic. He used to play practical jokes on certain members of the unit. These jokes were quite cruel, but that was Hitch, and one put up with it. Now, Carol Reed, who was a very, very fine director, he used to refer to them as racehorses. He said, you have to lead them gently to the post. Lead them and make them feel good and make them feel great. And then, when the barrier goes up or whatever, they'll be off and they'll race and they'll run for you.
I adored Carol Reed, the master director, as a man and as an artist. I went through this marvellous Reed University of film acting. I was very lucky.
Dear old gent passing by, something nice takes his eye.
Everything's clear, attack the rear. Get in and pick a pocket or two. You gotta pick a pocket or two, boys. You gotta pick a pocket or two.
The method was to rehearse the number for weeks.
When I see someone rich, both my thumbs start to itch.
Then bring in Carol Reed to look at it. He would then, to everybody's astonishment, insist that lots of the lovely fun stuff should come out because it wasn't relevant to the plot. In Pick a Pocket, for example, they had me conducting all the kids in a musical, like as if they were musicians. He said, no, that's false. No, it doesn't fit. The number drives through, and the number is telling Oliver a story. He made us play the whole number, not out front, which is stage technique, not to an unseen audience, but to the boy. The boy was the core of the number, and so we played it to Oliver.
You got to pick a pocket or two.
There's one of the things I've incidentally noticed is that a master director is so clever that you don't even notice his technique, and a bad director is so abominable that you sit there wondering what you're looking at. It's just that knowledge, the skill.
The director of Stagecoach, John Ford, had his own unique approach to the stars he employed, and it won him a handful of Oscars.
When I was a sound effects cutter for John Ford, I used to sneak out of my cutting room onto the set every day, or whenever I could, to watch him work, because he was my idol. And I wanted to be a director, and I would try to learn as much as I could. I noticed that John Wayne was in a lot of pictures that Ford made, Stagecoach and many others. And I asked Ford, why is it that John Wayne is so good in your pictures and not as good in other pictures?
Sure that, Chris?
Sure. I can tell you the truth. I knew.
Thanks. That's all I wanted to know.
And so he called me into the projection room and said, I'm going to run Stagecoach. And he said, I want you to count the times that Duke, John Wayne, his name was Duke Morrison, and he could always call him Duke. Count the times that Duke speaks in this picture.
Can I meet you back here in 10 minutes? I gave you my word, Curly. I ain't going back on it now. No ammunition. Lied to you, Curly. Got 3 left.
Well, he barely spoke at all. I lost count because I got carried away with the picture.
Come on.
I don't know whether it was 19 or 6 or what, but I said 11 times he spoke. He said, well, you missed a few, but he said, to answer your question, never let an actor talk unless he has something to say. Remember that.
David Lean, arguably Britain's most successful director, seemed to have much the same dismissive view of actors.
He liked to know at what point you'd break, so he would test every actor to find that place. I don't think he had much respect for actors, but then who can blame him? That meant that we actors had to stand often for quite a long time. And this was a very important meeting scene between myself and Charles Shaughnessy, Robert Mitchum, the teacher who was going to become my husband. And it was meant to be this amazing meeting on the beach. So David set the cameras about 50 yards apart. He made a stand there, and he said, I'm going back up there, and I'll give you a signal when you should start to walk together.
Pause.
Mrs. Shaughnessy. So we stood there, and David vanished. So we were waiting and waiting and waiting, and time was really going by, and Mitchum was getting a lot shorter, because he was disappearing into the sand, and I was too, but I wasn't so heavy. He said, this is it now. I've had enough. I tell you, honey, this is it. So we come together, and then we start walking back to David. And I'm absolutely terrified we're going to get blown up for this terrible naughtiness of not moving. And we go back to where we thought the camera was and the crew, and they weren't there. They'd gone to another location and left us in the sand. Now, you may say that's disgraceful on David's part, or was he purposely trying to get rid of some ego problems of the actors? Was he playing some sort of, I don't know what, playing God anyway, for sure.
Waterworld now has the unenviable reputation of being the costliest film ever made. But on location, all action films face the same kind of challenges between what the director wants and what he can get.
It was a huge, huge logistical undertaking. You know that there are going to be battles, and you know that there are going to be tough days, and it's going to be like trying to keep a dozen marbles on top of a beach ball every day. The process of production itself is it's a bit like running a gauntlet, you know, where you have to sort of put your head down and see your way through to the end. We had a gigantic floating set that was the size of a football field.
Hurry up!
That took months and months to engineer, cost millions of dollars. We were having to fly materials in from the States on a regular basis. It was huge. I mean, I've never done anything as big as this, and few people have. The Atoll battle, which took us about 5 weeks to shoot, was a monstrous undertaking. We had this floating set that was about a half a mile offshore in Hawaii that's tied down in 160 feet of water. And you've got 300 extras out there and 40 jet skis. We're up on the gates that we're trying to manipulate, get them to open, and we're shooting out toward the horizon. The sun's going down and we're losing the light. We've got simultaneously second units doing a helicopter shot. It was monstrous. You show up on the location and everything is storyboarded out to a T just to try to be as efficient as possible to get through a shooting day that costs $250,000. And so you try to plan it out like a military operation.
Not many filmmakers can rival the Bond team when it comes to handling the sheer scale and complexity of action movies. But of course, they've had over 30 years to master their craft.
This is such a big canvas to work on. You're looking at a 20-week shoot. You're looking at 5 different units, 3 different countries. Colossal amount of work goes into the making of one of these. It was like almost like a military operation when you plan to shoot a James Bond. We have a very good team of logistic organisers, you know. And at certain periods, we have an underwater unit, which works usually in the Bahamas, where they have good underwater conditions. And they work to my instructions there, although I'm usually thousands of miles away, but on the phone every night. We have an aerial unit, specialised aerial guys that dive out of aeroplanes and what have you. We sometimes have units that are doing mountaineering, you know, and again we use the best mountaineers we can find, and the skiing unit. Sometimes all that is going on simultaneously in order to achieve our production schedule, which is usually around about 100 days. So that way we were able to get all this fantastic action, worked according to the storyboards, all carefully controlled.
As a quick rule of thumb, the big films, by and large, are easier because you normally have more people to help you. I mean, with the Superman series with 1, 2, and 3, sometimes there would be 4 and 5 units shooting simultaneously. I would be in charge of those units, but whenever anything started to go wrong with one of the units, I would put my hands in my pockets and say, "I'm awfully sorry, lads, but the flying unit is desperate. I've got to go over there." And I would walk down the Pinewood Studios whistling to myself. And we would have meetings in the morning where you'd say, "Look, what we want to do," I would say, the scene is Terrence Stamp picks up this bus and throws it at Superman.
Take the end of this.
Anybody got any ideas? And sooner or later, someone would say, "Well, I could do this bit, or I could do half of this, or if we shoot this as a plate," and you say, "Fine, let's try it."
No! Don't do it! The people!
And if it doesn't work, you have enough money to correct it. With a small film, none of that is applicable. You're totally in charge. There's normally a minuscule budget, and you're trying to deal with subtleties of 3 people sitting around a room having a cup of coffee. I think that's infinitely harder.
The indispensable ingredient in every action movie is the special effects, which makes the special effects supervisor a key man on the picture.
I think the spectacular effects have been very important throughout the years. I mean, going back as far as Gone with the Wind with a big fire sequence in Atlanta. But it's become even more important, maybe over the last 20 years. I think the Bonds had a lot to do with it. The Bonds were based on spectacular. I mean, the Bonds were spectacular from beginning to end. That was the whole essence of them, I think.
Fire in the hole, ladies and gentlemen. Nice and quiet, everybody. Fire in the hole! Shh, shh, shh. All clear, Scott? All clear. On 3. 1, 2, 3.
The Richardsons, father and son, have been helping directors get the best out of their bangs for over half a century.
On A Bridge Too Far, there were a lot of very large battle scenes. I mean, just to give you some idea of the overall on that film, we went through 1.5 tons of high explosive. We went through 20 tons of low explosive, 10 tons of liquid propane gas. Particularly the 30th Corps breakout, which Michael Caine was involved in, we had to lay out 20 miles of electrical cable to fire all the different charges.
I got there on the first day on the Bridge Too Far. Richard Attenborough was the director, and I was playing a tank commander who was ambushed at Arnhem, Lieutenant Colonel Vanderloo. Richard put me in my tank, which I was the commander of, in a big long line of tanks, and then said, turn over, action, and the whole countryside went up in flames.
We let this vast field of pyrotechnics and explosives off. And we let it all off in probably under 30 seconds.
They'd been rigging it for 2 days. There were 14 cameras on. The tank behind me blew up, which I thought was real, with real people in it, because I hadn't looked at it. I just got there. I got made up and we got straight into this tank. And you see in the film, I'm just looking round, absolutely stunned at all this. And he said, I did it deliberately in order to get your face of when it happened, because that's how Joe Vanderloo felt.
Day turned to night. I mean, it went pitch black because of all this material was now floating in the air. What was gratifying for me was the actual character that Caine was portraying was actually on scene with us when we shot it, and he told me afterwards it was just like being there.
But making it just like being there is always expensive and sometimes dangerous.
Our accountants figured out that it cost us more to reproduce the attack on Pearl Harbor than the Japanese spent actually attacking Pearl Harbor. The most horrifying thing that happened on the film was the attack on one of the airfields. And all the stuntmen were all around our planes. What I wanted to do was, the first shot, the plane was just to go down the runway and explode. And the stuntmen knew that. And so they knew there was no danger for them. Well, this little plane takes off down the runway. It becomes airborne. The torque of the propeller started to bank the plane over. And all of these stuntmen are there, and they were running literally for their lives.
All directors say, I want a fight that's never been done before. I want a car chase that's never been done before. It's impossible. It's all been done. What makes the fight or the car chase something different are maybe the angles and the story and the reason behind it. And then of course, the stunts have to fit the action. The greatest stunt in the world is worthless if there isn't a story point or a reason for it.
The stuntman is Lauren James, who for years has crashed, jumped, rolled, and generally risked life and limb to give his directors their thrills. Occasionally, he's even changed sex for his art.
Doubling with women, most of the time when a stuntman doubles a woman, it's because the stunt is either too dangerous for a woman to do, or it takes physical strength that the stunt woman doesn't have, because we have many, many fine stunt women. But when I have had to double women, it's a whole new world, because in How the West Was Won, doubling Debbie Reynolds, she stands up in a wagon during an Indian battle and they hit a bump and it throws her out. Well, I did fall out, hit the ground fine and rolled. I'm supposed to get up and start to run. Well, I got up and tripped on the skirt twice and fell. There's a herd of all the loose horses and mules that are running and going to stampede over her. Well, in that she has the full western skirt with the hoops and all of that, and the regular clothes that a woman would wear. So I have this skirt that I have to run in, and I keep catching on things and stepping on it because it's a long one to the ground. I'm not used to automatically lifting it up, which a woman does without thinking. And then Jack Williams doubling Bob Preston runs the horses at me, 6-up team pulling a wagon, and Jack's on the lead horse, and he's going to pick me up and swing me up behind. Now they ran the loose horses in, so I have the loose horses coming on an angle around me from behind me, and the other one's coming at me, and I'm trying to dodge them and watch them. Well, when he did pick me up and he puts his arm out and I hooked arms and I swing up behind, the skirt flares out and part of it went under the tail of the horse and he started bucking and we almost got bucked off. But we didn't, we stayed on and it worked fine.
And when it's all put together, the sequence goes like this. But for sheer style, you can't touch Bond.
Yes, I suppose in The Spy Who Loved Me, the ski parachute sequence is reckoned to be one of the best all-time stunts. It was achieved with great difficulty at a place called Pang Na Tang on the Arctic Circle. There's a mountain there called Mount Asgard, which is 7,500 feet of pencil-like rock. It has a little snow cap on it. Just enough for a skier to actually ski down, if you can find anybody mad enough to do it. We spent quite a lot of money going on a feasibility study to Canada, and we got there and had a look, and we dropped a few toilet rolls down the mountainside and assessed the possibilities, did a test roll, and we came back to London and showed the test to United Artists, Danny Risner and Lewis Gilbert and Cubby Broccoli. And we presented also the budget. But, at that time, I'm talking about a long time ago now, and the budget was quite huge. It was $250,000. And they took 10 minutes to decide what to do, and they came out of the theatre and they said, go and do it. And it turned out to be one of the great all-time stunts. And it had that wonderful Bond ingredient of panache at the end when the Union Jack unfolds.
Speed 957. Places, everybody. This is a take. Clear the set. Right. Camera.
Making films is a complicated business, and it's only the director's vision that can turn chaos on location into magic on the screen. The best directors have usually been ruthless perfectionists, tough on everyone. None more so than Britain's David Lean.
David himself is an amazing eye-opener to an obsession of what's in that particular frame, and nothing else matters but that frame. And people can die, they can have their legs chopped off, they can drown in the ocean. But it's not no importance to him. Has he got the shot in the frame?
Nothing was too much trouble for Lean. If a landscape had to be changed to suit his vision, changed it was. In Lawrence of Arabia, he even built the Arab port of Aqaba on the Spanish coast. And he wasn't really happy with the desert in Jordan either.
I think most people remember the mirage shot, Ali coming out of the desert. What you probably don't realize in the cinema, that desert is painted. We chose what I call the nothing place, this white salt flat. Had nothing in it. We put the well in, and then we painted the sides of the desert in black to concentrate the audience's eye and to concentrate Lawrence's eye to who is that and what is it. Just 5 minutes before the cameras turned, we painted a white line. Camel's track is only a foot wide. Straight out in the direction of where the mirage, the object, was coming.
When I was out there a mile and a half out before my introduction shot, I was on my own. I had what they call a walkie-talkie, or one of these things, you know. It was all the time yelling at me and telling me what I go to your left a little bit more, or come a little bit right, you know. Yes, that's right, you're in a straight line now. Keep coming, keep coming, keep going. Faster, faster, faster. You know, all that was going on while I was sitting there. But that was the only company I had, was this walkie-talkie.
Who is he? Tapas!
What happened at the end of that scene, Peter O'Toole came up and hugged me. He said, you made all the difference. And David, in fact, came up and said, John, you'll probably never do another better bit of designing, however long you live, than that. It was quite extraordinary.
Ryan's daughter proved there was no such thing as an easy day on a David Lean film.
It was supposed to be a simple film, and David Lean worked it out that it would take 6 months. Well, we were there a year, and then we had to go to South Africa to finish. We found beaches in South Africa where the rocks were white, so we blew those black to match up with the black granite rocks in Ireland.
If we'd made it in the studio, we could have done it in, of course, about a quarter of the time. But we wanted to get the real smell of the outside.
Most storm scenes in films are always done in the studio with wind machines and rain and so on. But David wanted to do a real storm. The storm was so fierce, I had to devise a thing to go over the camera, which was called a clear screen. It's used on liners. The captain and the steersman look through this revolving glass. So the spray in the rain is straightened out. It's just like a sheet of plate glass. You would wait for a storm warning and you'd go to the spot. We had to chain the camera down to the rocks because the wind was so strong. We were all in wetsuits. Impossible to stand up. I mean, you were hanging on to the camera tripod, and because you'd been blown over. In fact, people were blown over. After about an hour, possibly, the storm would die away. So then you have to go away and get on with some other part of the film and wait for another storm warning. So the storm lasted about 6 months.
3 directors worked on Gone with the Wind, but the producer was David Selznick. And it was indisputably his vision that was to be served.
That was a unique picture. And he wound up uniquely doing almost everything on it. He wrote the script himself at the end. And what chaos there was, my goodness. Pulling the pages from out of his hands at 11 o'clock in the morning while they've been sitting there for 2 or 3 hours, waiting.
David Selznick was so meticulous about every little thing. Even the pantaloons underneath these huge skirts were hand-sewn because there weren't sewing machines at the time of the Civil War. His theory was that everybody knows it, that it's right, and feels it that it's right, and so the whole thing comes together.
David Selznick had caused to be planted out in Calabasas, California, a huge batch of fields with cotton plants in various states of growth. Now, they'd take us out there in the dark and they'd put lights on it, and to my horror, the director said, now start picking cotton. Well, we obediently went around picking cotton, and they'd beam, and they'd say, that's fine, keep picking. Now, finally, David Selznick materializes, and he had Vivian in tow. And I said, why have you had us out here picking all this cotton? He said, I wanted your hands to get nice and scratched, and I wanted all that, and I want you to look tired.
My back's near broken. Look at my hands. Mother said you could always tell a lady by her hand. I guess things like hens and ladies don't matter so much anymore. You rest, Sue. You're not well yet. And I can pick cotton for both of us. Scotland's hateful. It's making us work in the fields like...
Too bad about that. Now get back to work. I can't do everything at Tara all by myself.
What do I care about Tara? I hate Tara.
Don't you ever dare say you hate Tara again. Same as hating Pa and Ma.
She really slapped me. Whap! Well, that was all right. I mean, obviously, if she really slapped me, I've reacted correctly.
Just to see David, the light in his eyes, the zeal, it was like a maniac. Good, good, oh, good. Oh, let it bleed, that's fine. It was realism. It was what was in the book, and that was what he was bound and determined to reproduce.
With the shooting over and the film in the can, there's still another challenge, putting it all together.
All right, cut.
Cut it.
Cut.
Cut it.
I've loved the editing process. I like dreaming up films with a writer. I don't like shooting them as much because the pressure's so great. And then I love the privacy of the cutting room, where you're making it all happen, playing God, perhaps.
Great Expectations has become memorable because an early sequence in the film where the little boy is jumped upon by this enormous, horrible convict character. Most people remember that scene. What people don't often understand is that was an editing job that made it so exciting and so good. It was David the editor, as well as David the director, that made that moment memorable. And it was achieved by, first of all, lulling the audience, of deliberately slowing down the tempo. So when the boy comes to the grave and he puts the flowers on his mother's grave and his father's grave, and then he hears this wind blowing in these trees, and the boy becoming more and more scared. And then cutting to the trees, and the trees almost being like horrible men with arms. And then, as he runs across the graveyard, we cut to him screaming.
Keep still, you little devil, or I'll cut your throat.
It was the juxtaposition of those close shots, after having lulled the audience to the point where they were beginning to sit back in their seats, that then made them jump nearly out of their skin. It was a fine piece of film craftsmanship.
If you have 100 sequences in a film, and you could say you got 4 of them to match the image you had in your head before you started, I think you'd be a lucky man. There are certain sequences, which the Ticket to Ride sequence in Help, came together very easily, didn't require much change, and seemed to work. We got 2 cameras, went out in the snow, put the skis on it, and said, down that mountain, off you go. And anything that happened, we filmed. And we brought it back, laid up the track of Ticket to Ride, started putting the images together. The editor, John Victor Smith, I think in the first go, it was practically flawless. Between that and what you now see in the cinema, I think we made 3 changes out of 300 shots. It just fell into place. But there are no rules. Everything is always wrong. Sometimes it's 70, 80% wrong. Sometimes it's only a little bit wrong. And sometimes when the whole thing is put together and you think that your average is quite good, the audience says, this is a terrible film, and you don't know why.
So now comes the cliffhanger, the final, the most important challenge, showing the film to the public. It's the most uncertain of all the stages in filmmaking.
The one thing that we know in the industry is that you can't make people go to a movie. There's nothing you can do. You can spend so much money advertising, you can be very clever in your advertising manipulation, but if people simply don't want to see a movie, nothing will get them to go. And on the other side of the coin, nothing will stop people from going to see a movie that they really want to see.
So perhaps it's not surprising that when the public likes your film, you cherish the experience forever.
We previewed Back to the Future the first time. We really had a sense that, I mean, I had never seen an audience react to a film this way. I mean, they had no idea what they were going to see, and they were literally screaming at the end of the movie.
The editor of Lawrence of Arabia, Anne Coates, has never forgotten its first showing.
They were having this big screening, cast and crew and press and everything at the Odeon Leicester Square on the Sunday evening. But because it was so oversubscribed, they decided to have another showing in the morning. And for reasons that I now can't remember, David never came to that morning showing. So it was only Sam and I that saw it in the morning. And, you know, the audience was, I mean, just blown away by the movie. I mean, you knew you were on a winner. If you hadn't before then, I mean, it was just fantastic. And everybody was also, they laugh about these stories, but I know my mother and family were there and everything, and everybody was dying of thirst. They ran out of juice and Coca-Cola and stuff, because it's just this feeling of desert absolutely sucked everybody dry.
To this day, a happy though puzzled John Schlesinger can remember how enthusiastically Midnight Cowboy was received.
The film was an enormous success from the word go. Don't know why. I don't know. Didn't have a lot of publicity. The notices were by and large good, some terrible ones. But the first day, there was a queue right round the block on 3rd Avenue at the Coronet, where it was showing. I don't know why it was a success. Caught a nerve at that time, and it was something that nobody had seen before. We were just jolly lucky. It was a fluke.
But perhaps the greatest reception of them all was for Gone with the Wind.
When Gone with the Wind was premiered in Atlanta, the whole city turned out. Clark Gable had come, and Clark Gable was called the King, and he was the King.
Yes, it's the Clark Gables, just in from the coast. Charming.
He came in a separate plane, and the whole airport came to a stop. It just stopped. All planes stopped coming in, and people stopped getting on or off plane. It was Clark Gable. When you went through town, and there were bands on every corner playing Dixie. Everybody was dressed in the costumes. The whole sky with these lights going in the darkness. It was almost as if they were stunned by this thing that was happening.
They just can't get enough of the Gables, and Clark is his usual modest self.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I am here just as a spectator.
I'll go home. And I'll think of some way to get him back. After all, tomorrow is another day.
The audience sat there, and there was not a sound the entire time. I believe it's 4 hours, isn't it? And they just sat there. I don't think they breathed in and out. They certainly didn't sneeze or cough or anything. They were mesmerized. It was a good evening.
Well, there you are. They've been doing it for 100 years now. And as long as there are filmmakers with a passion to produce great pictures, cinema will always be the greatest show on earth. Just have to come back tomorrow. After all, in the cinema, tomorrow is another day.
Well, next week on Lights, Camera, Action, the struggle between filmmakers and the censorship board to show love and sex on screen. That's next Sunday at 10.